Hey, good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Let's Talk About It. This is Susan Johnson, and I'm here with my co-host, Dennis O'Brien, and boy, do we have a great show for you today. Right, Dennis?
Yeah, we sure do. I can still remember back, I don't know how many years ago it was, when you first got elected, you came to your last stop before the election was Let's Talk About It. You haven't forgotten that. You had just come from a rally at UConn. I think Coach Calhoun was there. I think there was who was
Ben Affleck.
That's right. Ben Affleck was there, and you were totally excited, and the rest is history. And you won that election, and
yeah,
right,
there's no question. It was an 83 vote margin.
That's
and
right.
All 83 votes were because of this show.
Okay, there we go,
well,
folks.
That's
why this show has survived for almost 25 years now. We've been on.
Yeah,
and yeah, it is amazing every Friday.
Yeah, we love it.
And we're so glad to have you. And wow, great to see you. And Adam Richardson is here, who's a Willimantic resident. He serves with me on the Willimantic Taxing District Board of Directors.
All right, Adam. Yeah. We are
Okay.
really happy because, Joe Courtney, our congressman here in the 2nd Congressional District, has done an amazing thing, and he understands the policies very, very well. We were really thrilled to have him come and talk to the Wyndham Senior Center a couple of weeks ago to talk about all the things that the Medicare, Medicaid programs do. And now he's back to talk to us a little bit more. But before we get into that, I do want to announce something that happened in the bonding commission today, and that is the Wyndham Inn got $250,000 to do a planning study so that they can make that Wyndham Inn into something great. It is a beautiful spot. It's very historic, and it's a gorgeous neighborhood in the Wyndham Center neighborhood. So congratulations to the people who have been working on that. I've been down there talking to them, and I am just thrilled that they got that money. And the other thing that I wanted to just, before we bring Joe on here to talk about what's going on at the federal level is what I know, and let's see just what we know so far. And this should be coming out in my my mailer that I get. If you want to, sign up for my mailer, and you can get a weekly update. You'll get the radio show. You'll get all the things that we've been doing and things that are going on all over town and the state. So one of the things that I found out, and this will be in my release, is we have now, right now, $150 million to the Connecticut Department of Public Health has been cut by the federal government. $14 million in academic and other programs for Connecticut schools has been cut. $5.6 million to the local food for schools program. $3.7 million to the local food purchase assistance program, and $1 million in canceled estate leases. These are the things that we're faced with. I sit on the Appropriations Committee. These are the things that we're looking at. We're already looking at reduced access to resources because the funding that we got because of COVID has gone away. And now we're planning what we can do. And we were in the beginning thinking, oh, we'll have that federal money. But now this is what we were faced with so far. And I'm just thrilled to have Congressman Courtney here to tell us a little bit more about what's going on the federal level with some of these programs.
So thank you, Susan, again for hosting and inviting me here this evening. And congratulations. I know from the old days when I was in the General Assembly how hyper-competitive the bonding commission is. So to actually get that through to the finish line says a lot about your advocacy, not just on the floor of the House, but also, on all the follow-up agencies. And it's a great part of the state and the city, so hopefully that's going to blossom. So,
Thank you for that.
So since January 20th, there's a number of things that have been happening. There's, I think, 111 executive orders now have been issued, which, shatters records of, prior presidents in terms of their whole 4-year full terms, let alone their first 90 days in office. And in addition to that, the budget office, the Office of Management and Budget, has just been, kind of going through with a sledgehammer and cutting off funds that had already been obligated to grantees like the state of Connecticut, the list that you just recited that's there. I mean, the $150 million to the Department of Public Health is, and this, is that money actually goes to local public health districts.
Yes.
Who operate on a shoestring and do so much in terms of, going into nursing homes to, do testing for flus and, making sure that, people as a communities are safe in terms of airborne pathogens and as I said, they are as like lean as any sort of programs in government. Most of the public health districts are run by volunteers or retired physicians, but I mean that is a dangerous cut in terms of just what that means in terms of the risk factor for local communities in Eastern Connecticut. So, but those numbers, which are pretty enormous, pale in comparison to the 10-year budget plan that Trump and the Republicans in Congress are pushing through. And actually, we had a vote yesterday that kind of advanced another step in the process. The main thrust of this effort is to extend the tax cuts from 2017. They're going to expire at the end of December. And basically, they want to push them out another 10 years. Again, as you recall, these were concentrated not just in the top 1%, but the top 0.1%. And for the middle class and working people, it is just, budget dust in terms of what that law meant to them.
Well, I just want to say, Congressman Courtney, we are really very, very concerned because a lot of people don't understand, and I found this in my discussions wherever I go about budgets, that tax exemptions are spending. Now, we always talk about spending in terms of public health or SNAP benefits for food or, other kinds of Medicaid, Medicare. They always talk about spending. But it really is, now you have a Ways and Means Committee, but here in Connecticut, as you know, because you served here in Connecticut too, we have the Appropriations Committee and the Finance, Revenue, and Bonding Committee. They're separated. So people think that when you get something like an exemption, that it somehow isn't paid for by the people who are paying their taxes. Yet tax exemptions and tax credits are spending. Could you tell us a little bit about that and how it works a little bit on the federal level?
Sure. So, we're really lucky to have the Congressional Budget Office, which, again, like you have the Office of Fiscal Analysis, where you've got really smart people that can run the numbers in terms of what a tax change would result in to the public finances of the country. And so the tax cut extension, which I just mentioned, for 10 years, the CBO has already run the numbers, and it's a $5 trillion hit on the deficit. Again, we are running record deficits right now. If you look at the interest payments that we're making on an annual basis, it's $1 trillion a year, which is bigger than the Defense Department's budget or Medicare's budget. Totally, frankly, unsustainable and unacceptable. I mean, our bonds, which we use to pay for deficits, are now, if you're following the news in just the last couple of weeks, is that between the high levels of borrowing and then the tariff chaos that's happening right now, bond holders are selling off their U.S. bonds and driving up the interest payments even further. So this is a very
let me just
reckless policy that these guys are pursuing.
Who's getting the interest money from all the payments on the bonding?
Well, some bondholders are people who go out and buy a $100 bond to give to their kid, but most of the bonds are obviously Wall Street traders. Some of them are overseas. Japan is the biggest country that holds our bonds, and actually what's happened in the last week is they've been unloading their bonds, and partly it's in reaction to Trump's tariff war that he started with a country that actually is now an ally of our country. And so it's a $5 trillion hit on top of the existing debt that we already have. And to try and reduce some of that, budget impact, the Republicans proposed a number of cuts to spending, which we talked about in Wyndham at the senior center there. But the big one is Medicaid, which is the federal program that provides insurance coverage for 72 million people. I was with Sean Scanlon this morning in Norwich talking about it. And in Connecticut, 80% of the people who are on Medicaid are working people. I mean, this is, the perception of Medicaid, and we've all been around long enough in legal aid, and that Medicaid was always kind of like the very poor. But it's not your father's Medicaid anymore. And a lot of people, whether it's through the exchange or whether it's through Husky, single adult coverage, people who are getting help with opioid addiction, that are now on Medicaid. So the bill proposes an $880 billion cut, which in Connecticut, as Sean and the governor pointed out, on an annual basis, $6 billion comes into the state of Connecticut
Yes.
from Medicaid. And basically running the numbers proportionally in terms of what that cut would mean, it would be basically $1 billion hit
Right.
on the Connecticut state budget,
Let me-
which, is just
It's
a nightmare.
It's hard to imagine that.
It's actually
And we haven't even talked about the impact on
fiscal-
patients
fiscal
Right,
emergency.
or
Let's-
doctors.
Let's
Right.
just
Yeah.
break out a little bit because, one of the things when I first started working on Medicare and Medicaid at Legal Assistance to Medicare Patients and then the Center for Medicare Advocacy is I went to learn about, the Medicaid program is numerous programs. Let's just go through a couple of them anyway. So here in Connecticut, the first kind of Medicaid program was Husky A, B, C, and D, which covers different ranges of families, women and children, covers all different people with disabilities as a supplement to their Medicare. We also, we have the Medicare Savings Program
Yep,
for the
that's a
Senior
good point.
Citizens
Absolutely.
Program. And so people, if you haven't applied for the Medicare Savings Program, it subsidizes your premiums,
Part
your
B,
co-insurance payments, your deductible on your Part B. It subsidizes all those things so that you don't have that bill coming to you if you're within a certain income range, depending on your income range. So Medicare Savings is subsidized by the Medicaid program. It was Medicaid expansion. In addition to that, Medicare Savings, that's been along since 1988, but it's transformed over the years to some degree. And then the other program that we have is the subsidies by Medicaid, the Medicaid expansion. Through the Affordable Care Act. So a lot of people are getting subsidies up to 400% of poverty for the private insurance that they buy, and they get the subsidy through the Medicaid program, which is fluctuated from time to time depending on who the president is. Now, when Biden was president, we got a better subsidy, and I think that some of that subsidy may be going by if these cuts go into effect.
Correct. I mean, another population which I think kind of astonishes people is that 40% of the live births in the state of Connecticut are Medicaid covered.
That's right.
I was up at Day Kimball the other day, and 50% of their live births are on Medicaid. You go around to rural states in the heartland where actually Medicaid spending and Medicaid use is higher than New England. The live births numbers are even 60%, 70%. John Larson and I did a visit to Connecticut Children's last week and went through the neonatology unit that's there, which again, we have just this amazing hospital that provides life for infants who are sometimes 1 or 2 pounds, and but again, same thing. If you go through that unit and you just Medicaid, in terms and they can't cost shift to Medicare because they don't have any old people, that's patients that are there, and so I mean this is really a really dangerous proposal in terms of just and again all of the mythology. Mike Johnson, when we were voting yesterday, and I'll talk a little bit about the vote, but he was being interviewed by the press, and he just said, "Wow, we're going after waste, fraud, and abuse." Which again, Connecticut has waste, fraud, and abuse investigators at this Department of Social, and a unit, right, in the Attorney General's office to go after doctors.
That's been in place for a long time.
That's right, and they do a good job. And so, but the notion that there's $880 billion of waste, fraud, and abuse is like ridiculous. And the other thing is, we're going after able-bodied people who are on Medicare, on Medicaid. They should get off their video games and go out and get a job.
I heard that.
And it's just like, no, 80% of the people who are on Medicaid are working.
Yep.
They have a job.
Yes.
So what are they going to do? Take the people who can't function at all from the nursing home and put them out there stuck in the grocery bags?
Percentage, right,
I mean, people who are wheelchair bound or completely bed bound rather, they are on Medicaid, and it's what happens. You spend your money down, and then you transfer to the Medicaid program once you spent your money down on the cost of your care in a nursing home, for example, or even in home care situations. So if you are on the Medicare has limited coverage periods, and then after you've qualified and exhausted Medicare, you still have some resources, you spend that down. If you're unable to, get that help from people, then you're going to be suffering alone in your home somewhere, because a lot of these facilities won't be able to afford to take people without the Medicare and Medicaid base. And I just want to emphasize the fact, because I don't think people fully realize that the Medicare and Medicaid programs are the foundational subsidies for all medical services. That without Medicare and Medicaid foundational subsidies, then the private insurance industry can't make up the difference. People won't be able to get health insurance through their employee benefit plans, and they probably will have gigantic deductibles if they're the ERISA plans, which are just federally, regulated. And I'm not going to get too weedy, but
No, don't do that.
So one other quick point. So assuming that, this passed, God forbid. I mean, the thing that's also important to remember, it does not still pay for the size of the tax cuts. There's still going to be about $3 trillion in new debt as a country, which we're taking on to pay for, again, a tax plan that just benefits, almost obscenely, disproportionately, people like Elon Musk and, Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos, who don't need a tax cut. There are certainly some rates in there for middle class and working families that are still in that 2017 bill. We could accommodate and extend those, and it would be easy peasy.
Right,
in
not
terms
much
of just-
money.
Yeah, so anyway, the vote yesterday in the House, which moved this process one step further, it has not come up for a final vote yet. It was 216 to 214, which
Wow.
doesn't get much closer than that. And the reason why I think it's so close is that, first of all, it's a very closely divided House, but also some Republicans did vote against it. There was actually initially enough Republicans voting against it that it would have killed the bill. Trump called the cloakroom in the floor of the House and got those last remaining votes to switch. But the fact that it was so hard for them to get that through is it's evidence of the fact that, whether you're in the Midwest or, the heartland states with Republican governors, you're creating the same, headache, almost heart attack for state governments that would happen here in Connecticut. This is not sort of a policy that just goes after blue states. So Republican governors are now starting to, make noise, and then the Hospitals Association, which sometimes lean Republican, are now also starting to call in. And people have questions about any of this. They can certainly call my office, and if people belong to any sort of patient advocacy groups like the American Cancer Society or Alzheimer's, who are also starting to raise the alarm because they know that that's key to their members' help that's there. So, I actually really think we can win this fight. We're not done yet.
Well, I think, people getting out in the street and protesting and complaining, that's important. It's
Yes.
really important for people to show that they don't want to accept this. This is unacceptable, and something needs to be done. I was at a rally here in Wyndham a couple of weeks ago, and there were lots of people, there there that I didn't know. And I'm hoping that some of them were people who voted for Trump. I'm willing to forgive them
Yes.
if they
No,
to
absolutely.
get on the
No.
right side and show the congressional Republicans that he doesn't have the support that they think he has, so that they don't fear him so much that they're going to do like they did yesterday with the cloakroom speech.
Right.
That's what we need. We need to push the congressional Republicans to do the right thing, because they're from a lot of states that are getting hit just as hard as we are.
Even harder.
It's
Yeah.
basically, as I see it, as a senior citizen, it's a war on senior citizens and children.
Speaking of which, Social Security, which I know we were going to
Please,
talk about
yeah,
a little
please,
bit as well.
please
here.
go, yes.
So Tuesday is going to be Day of Action on Social Security.
Tuesday, that's,
yes.
what does that come out to be?
It's the 14th.
15th, that's
15th, yeah.
tax day.
15th, okay, that's
So-
on
I know
April
that.
15th.
So there's going to be rallies all across the country. We're doing one in New London at
Great.
2 o'clock. And,
Super.
And again, what's happening with Social Security is that and people are like, oh, Democrats, you just fearmonger and demagogue
No.
and this. But if you look at what the, what's happened to the Social Security Administration, today, when President Trump took office, it's 57,000 workers across the country that are in Social Security. That's down from what is about 70,000 workers in the 2010s.
Right.
Today, there are 71 million people collecting Social Security benefits. The baby boomer surge is happening, and it's going to keep going higher. Trump has already, and Doge has already put out that they want to get rid of 7,000 more workers in the Social Security. Martin O'Malley, who was the head of the Social Security Administration under President Biden, was at a meeting I was at 2 days ago where he said he thinks actually it's going to be probably closer to 10,000 with people who are taking voluntary retirements that's there. The service right now, which is, you try to get an appointment, you got to wait in line. I mean, which
Right.
is, people are okay with that, but this is going to worsen that. The phone call identification for people to set up their bank accounts, which has been, the system
Right.
for decades and decades. They announced that was being shut off, and people would have to come in person for appointments, which was already creating a horror show in terms of elderly people coming in who were maybe changing their bank accounts or whatever. So they've actually retreated on that just a couple days ago. By the way, I think people should listen to that because we've actually forced them to backtrack on a number of
I think
items
so.
like that.
I
And
think
that's-
so.
But again, there's no question that they're hollowing out the infrastructure of Social Security, with this kind of mass layoffs, which has absolutely nothing to do with government efficiency. People are getting laid off who are sometimes the most highly valued
Right.
workers, along with somebody who maybe is a new probationary employee.
Right.
And the bottom line is it's just simple math. If you're cutting the workforce to below 50,000 and the number of people who are going to be on Social Security is going to be approaching 80 million, there's just going to be a deterioration of Social Security. On top of that, you've had Doge and Musk and Trump in his State of the Union address, spreading these just total lies about the fact that people were 150 years
Oh,
old
right.
collecting
Receiving
Social Security.
benefits, yeah.
But I mean, there's a purpose, there's an intent behind this, which is to discredit
Yes.
the Social Security program. 99.3% of Social Security benefits are accurately dispersed by the system. I mean, it really actually is quite remarkable.
It's a great system.
And they have been audited to death
Yeah.
in terms of outside groups, the Social Security trustees, who track accuracy, because it's such a massive program that's there. But you got Musk out there calling it a Ponzi scheme,
Right. Like he
he
knows.
wants to eliminate Social Security. He actually used that on Fox News
Right.
as a way of getting to the kind of tax cuts that they want. And so in this district, our district, we have 165,000 people out of the total population of a congressional district is 720,000. So 165,000 people. I mean, that is a huge portion of the population.
All
Of
of
the
us.
population, and it's not just retirees; it's children of
Yes.
who've lost a parent
Yep.
or someone on disability.
Yep.
And
Yeah, I was a survivor because my father died when I was 5, and my brother was 5 months old. He served in World War II. He became ill because of the bombing in the Pacific Theater and cleaning up after the Pearl Harbor bombing. So he was there, dying at 33 with cancer that he got. The doctor said that this had to be from his service as a veteran. So my brother and I were both we were on survivors benefits for Social Security back in the day, and it was just a brand new program then. But it's really was a huge help and a huge savings to keep us going. And as it was, my mother was terrified every single month when she had to pay the bills. And this is another way that this society saves people from those kinds of problems when somebody dies.
and it's an earned benefit.
Yes,
I mean,
it
it's
is.
not an entitlement.
Exactly.
That's correct.
And I think we can never say that enough.
That's right.
Because as anyone listening knows, you're paying in with every pay stub.
That's
and,
right.
And it's and again, we know 10 years from now it needs a tweak and a fix. Hit another dip. That's not the first time that's ever happened to Social Security since 1935 when Franklin Roosevelt signed it
Right.
into law. So. One of the things that we're going to talk about at the rally a little bit is that the people who work there, had union representation, American Federation of Government Employees. Trump, by executive order, stripped the collective bargaining rights of all civilian federal employees, which is, another way of sort of, just kind of trying to diminish the value that people, have who are doing this incredibly important work. It is so. It's just like
It's a general attack on government.
Yeah.
That's
It's
what it is.
trying to create
dismantling the
a
government.
chaotic situation, so they'll turn to him as a strong man to fix it in his own way. And his idea of fixing it is to give more to the super rich. And I think the population is going to go way down, because I think a lot of people are going to die if these cuts go into effect the way they want them to. I hate to say it, but it is. This is a critical time. I've been writing on Facebook about how this is time for us to become just like World War II, the greatest generation. We need to follow their lead. This is like being at war, and we need to get out in the streets. We need to get out at the rallies and support our Congress people and try to stop this, because this is serious. This is very serious.
for a lot of people, the Social Security check is it.
Yeah.
That's correct.
It's,
That's correct.
it's a
That's
very
right.
high percentage.
And
So
Right.
especially after the 1980s, when they created the IRAs, the independent retirement accounts, 401ks and 401as, and a lot of people had a little bit in there. But if the stock market goes down, there goes your 401k resource. And so this is another thing that's going to hit the seniors. Not only if the Social Security isn't there for you, and for us. You've got your own investment, your defined benefit plans, which is the kind of plan that we used to have back before they really adjusted to having just 401ks and 401as. Those used to be a guaranteed amount of money. You knew what you were going to get. But with a 401k and 401a, when the stock market goes up, you're going to do well. When it goes down, you're not going to do so well. And some people, the last time with the crash, with the 2001, and also 2008 recessions that we hit for different reasons. Some people lost their whole account. So it's a very scary time for everybody. If you're a senior, and not if you're just about to retire, but also if you're retired and you're living off your 401k and A and the Social Security plan.
yeah, just the calls that come into our office, the latest sort of crisis with the tariff, it created tanking of the stock market. We're hearing from a lot of people who, the sort of gallows humor of like 401k is now a 201k,
Yeah.
But this is all self-induced, self-inflicted. That's the thing that,
Absolutely.
if it was like an external event, I think as a
Right.
nation we'd sort of be able to, kind of support each other. But this is happening because of decisions that are being made in the White House.
Yeah, in fact, Joe Biden left the country in great shape, and now this guy's diminishing it quickly, and in a big way with a cleaver, with a chainsaw. Okay,
Yeah.
you got a guy running around with a chainsaw and eliminating people's jobs like it's funny, and he's certainly no politician. That's good. Because it's good that people are revolting against Musk. I'm not advocating anybody burning cars or anything like that, but Musk is a problem, and I can't understand how he can get away with doing this stuff when he's not elected or officially appointed, and he's got these young guys running around, with access to
Resources.
private records and stuff like that. It is really got to be for you two public officials. Adam and I are public officials on a very local level, but you guys are you're right in the belly of the beast, to some extent. And wow, what a tremendous responsibility you have, and I know you're fulfilling it. And a lot of the great Democrats in the Congress. I'm so proud of John Larson and our whole congressional. I've said it for years. Connecticut has the best congressional delegation in the whole country. There is no doubt about it. And if everybody was like Connecticut, we'd be fine.
So
But
speaking of John, I'm
Right.
sure many of you saw his
Oh, yeah.
viral.
That was great.
I passed it all around all over the place. Sure.
So So
I loved it.
About 2 days after it went bonkers there,
Yeah.
we flew into Bradley coming home, and we're going down the escalator near the baggage claim.
Right.
That's there, and people burst into applause.
That's
Oh,
great.
They just,
That's
they,
great.
all they,
My
just, they
gosh.
just saw him.
Yeah.
And started applauding. John's like looking
Right.
Stan Hurley behind me, or what, what's going on here?
I was
I'll
surprised.
tell you
I've never seen John like that.
It was wonderful.
It was wonderful. I
It was, he worked
watched
so
it
hard.
over and over again.
He worked so hard on Social Security.
Yeah,
His bill, by the way, Social Security 2100,
Right.
would fix the finances of Social Security
Yeah.
for at least the next 40 or 50 years, if not more.
Right.
And, it's a shame, I mean, and basically what it would do is it would lift that cap on income that people stop paying in at about $170,000 a year.
Right. That's
And-
really what needs to be done.
And that, as you know, Congressman Courtney, back in the early '80s when Reagan was the president and O'Neill was the speaker, they actually wanted it to go up then to the 180,000 cap. And that would have solved all of it, but it's been a very slow process getting it up to that point. And it's
Right.
been very, very slow. And if they'd done it back when they said they were, that would have been a
Yeah, I mean, when you think
savings
about it, I
grace.
mean, a middle class person who's paying 6%, right, and getting matched, compared to, and Warren Buffett talks about this, is that his effective rate for Social Security is like point
Yeah.
001
Next to nothing.
because he stops paying in
Right.
at that cap,
Right.
and he said it's not fair that my secretary is paying 6% of her income or his income into the program, and I'm paying .00. So it's I mean, and it's while you're raising taxes, actually it's just you're basically equalizing the tax rate for everybody to pay into this program, which is one of the crown jewels
It is,
of
and that
our
was
country.
And meanwhile,
that
the
was
Republicans
design.
are giving another huge tax break, extending another huge tax break to the rich.
Yeah.
So they're getting it in all directions.
Yeah.
And they don't need it.
And don't forget now, folks, tax breaks are spending.
Okay, so
Keep saying
you got
tax
that.
breaks are spending.
Okay, hey, it can't be said often enough.
And this bill adds to the deficit. I mean, that's the
Right.
thing. I don't want to hear another word about so-called deficit
Right.
hikes in that party, because they are just, taking it and multiplying it by just incredible amount.
The last several Democratic presidents have gone in and reduced the deficit with the help of the congressional Democrats, and it's unbelievable that people that these guys get in there and they talk about deficits, and then they expand the deficits
Well, let
by
me
giving
just-
breaks to their wealthy, super wealthy friends.
That's their plan. It's been the plan since Milton Friedman told them to do this back in the
Right.
white paper in the 1970s, and it finally got Reagan in there to start doing it. So whenever they left, when the Reagan left and had a Democrat or Bush came in before Clinton, they'd have a big deficit, and then they'd say, well, we're going to have to cut back on spending because look at the debt you have, and it was. I'm going to quote Tom Hartman now. He says that it's, they wanted to, I said, well, why aren't we going to get elected? That's what Milton Friedman said. Well, they said, the Democrats take care of the people, and they give them resources. So what you've got to do is you've got to smash the Democrats' Santa in the face by creating a huge debt, and then that way they can't go ahead and take care of the people once you leave office. And that's what they've done ever since Reagan was president.
Yeah, don't even teach them to read. I mean, the whole, it all goes back a long way. And it's, speaking about that,
Department of Education.
I have to bring that up
Yeah,
because that's
sure.
if I weren't a lawyer, I'd be a teacher. I think teachers are so important, so valuable. My public education, I got a great education in New Britain Public Schools and went to UConn for next to nothing, and then UConn Law School for not much. I got there before you did, and it might have been a little bit more expensive. But when I was at UConn Law School, I paid $300 a year plus books, and that was amazing. And now it's so expensive, and this is all part of it. It's just not. We've done a lot better in a lot of ways. We're much more open to. We treat people a lot better who are not white males, but no question. But in terms of our economy, not good.
No,
And it's these guys who are doing it.
Yeah, if you look at our competitors out there, Russia, China, they definitely invest in education because they want to basically overtake this country in terms of its technology and innovation. So the Department of Education, which was created under Jimmy Carter
Yeah.
back
Yep.
in 1979.
Yeah.
Was really an attempt to try and create education as a national priority. It did not create a national superintendent of schools or board of education.
Right.
It still left decision making on things like curriculum, even school year, stuff like that. I mean, primarily in the hands locally, but it
Yep.
made sure that communities like Willimantic, which had low property tax bases, at least had a floor of assistance so that there would be equality of opportunity for kids in these schools. Title I, was the program.
Right.
And, Linda McMahon, the new education secretary, was on CNN basically saying that, we're getting rid of the department, but, all of these programs are going to be protected
Yeah.
and preserved. If you go back and look at budgets that, with the Republicans in Congress, when they have had the gavels, they always cut.
Right.
Title I,
Yes.
IDEA,
Right.
the special education programs. But the one thing, if you watch that interview that just kind of drove me crazy was that she kept talking about NAEP scores, which is the National Achievement Education Progress National Report Card, which has been around for a long time.
Yep.
And she was saying how our schools aren't growing fast enough on reading and math that's there, and except Louisiana jumped, and we really want to find out from the governor what they're doing down there. Well, first of all, Connecticut's number 4 in the country, just for the record.
thank you.
Yeah, we're doing well here, relatively
And if you
speaking.
look at the latest numbers, actually, our math scores went up
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
fourth graders. Reading, didn't go backwards. It went up a little bit there.
Right.
We all want it to go better. But one last point is that if she thinks NAEP is such a great tool, then she ought to look at who actually organizes NAEP and collects the data and does the report card. It's the U.S. Department of Education.
That's
Thank
right.
you.
And they
Yeah.
That's right.
gutted
Yeah.
that office
Sure.
Yeah.
of education statistics.
And I want
Yeah.
to just say, hey, praise to the state of Connecticut, because since 2017, we've finally made our education cost sharing grant where it should be in accordance with the formula. Before that, we were Wyndham was $10 million every single year underfunded. And so were all the urban areas.
Yep.
And now we are equalized in accordance with that. So that is one of the reasons that you see our scores and why we're probably rated 4th. And I just want to throw that in there
Well,
because
they're turning out the headlights by geting rid of that report
Yes,
card.
that's
the
horrible
You just
thing.
don't know where,
Yeah.
and I mean, and it's very, and for so I'm on the education committee.
too.
She'll be coming over to testify, and
Wow.
she's going to get an earful.
I'm gonna have to
wanna-
watch that one.
Yeah, I want to see that, but I also want to add one thing, because one of the things I keep talking about is there's not enough progress. But when we deindustrialized the United States, where our tax base went overseas, so then you have all these places that relied on property taxes to pay for education. They were struggling to try and have those have enough money to address educational needs. So if you want to really make sure that we're in a situation where we can make sure we go progress, you can't decrease the funding. It has to go up because we lost those property tax bases, and that's the kind of thing we kind of ignore. We've been ignoring since Reagan, since the GATT and NAFTA treaties and all that. But you wouldn't have GATT and NAFTA treaties if you didn't have the Reagan cuts.
Yep.
Those tax cuts set it up so that the next group could come in and do those trading agreements.
So,
Susan never misses an opportunity to remind everybody how this all started with Reagan. And she's right. And she's right. But right now, I would take Reagan in a minute over.
So,
the
one thing
current
I just was reading a biography, which the whole issue of the Department of Education came into a couple of chapters, which was a biography of Hyman Rickover,
Yeah, sure.
who was the father of the nuclear navy.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
Jimmy Carter was one of the pioneering
he was
lieutenants in the
naval-
Navy who was
naval
picked
officer,
by
yeah.
Rickover to
Right.
be one of the first of the nuclear navy there. But
Yeah.
when he was elected president, Rickover was still at the head of naval reactors,
remember,
and
yeah.
they spent a lot of time together. And Rickover, who was a genius in naval issues and engineering, but all he really wanted to do when he went over to the White House to meet with Carter was to talk about how worried he was about how this country was falling behind educationally, And as a result of a lot of those conversations, that was one of the reasons why Carter pushed the creation
that's
of the
interesting.
Department of Education. Yeah,
Yeah.
because and it's still true today.
Yes.
We're in a
Oh,
competition out there,
yeah.
and to sort of say we're going to let every sort of local school district, God knows, who's on, the board of ed,
Right.
the superintendent, determine what these kids are going to have in terms of actually competing and succeeding in life. It's really dangerous in terms of just, falling behind.
Yeah.
And again, you cannot ask for a more credible voice than Hyman Rickover, who,
Right.
was the longest serving military active duty person in American history.
Well, I know how much public education did for me, and it was amazing, and it changed my life completely, got me on the right track, and the Army helped after spending 2 years in the Army, straightened me out real well, got back to UConn, and then UConn Law School, and
GI
here I am.
GI Bill?
Yeah, I was in the GI Bill. I was
absolutely.
a
There you
Vietnam era vet
Yeah.
who did not go to Nam, but I was in during the early part of the war.
Yeah.
And, public education and labor unions are the two big building blocks of what made America great, what made it great for us older folks when we were kids. And our economy was amazing. And ever since, I grew up in New Britain where they had all these factories that were booming, and they, they had great public schools, just like they did in Willimantic with the American Bread and whatnot. And we don't have that now. And I know you are working really hard, and our local officials are working really hard to, create jobs and maintain jobs and create jobs. And that's one of the great things that you have accomplished in your years in Congress is to, provide lots and lots of jobs for people in Eastern Connecticut.
Right.
Good jobs.
Yep. No, it's
That's
a great
important.
district.
Yeah.
Right.
Just going back to the tariffs a little bit, and
Yeah.
I did pick on Milton Friedman, but then but now I'm going to say something about Milton Friedman and tariffs. And one of the things Milton Friedman said back in the day, and don't forget he's extremely conservative, that
Yeah,
tariffs
libertarian.
were a very, very bad idea. And so that they would destroy the economy, and so I'm bipartisan that way. I take a look at the facts and the policy, and that is one of the things that we're really suffering with, and the fact that this president with the executive orders isn't following the Constitution, isn't following the separation of powers, isn't following any of these things, and is doing these things with the economy that really is up to Congress, and if there's a dispute, goes to the court. And I just want to make it really clear that we have a real bad situation in terms of our Constitution.
So you're absolutely right. If you read the Article 1 powers of the Congress, setting tariffs is specifically listed there. So what Trump has been doing is there is a statute that goes back decades and decades, a national emergency tariff law,
Right.
that basically says that if we're in a national emergency, and we're talking, conditions of wartime.
Yeah, really bad.
That he would have the authority to raise tariffs on his own, and that's what he's been exercising with raising tariffs on Canada.
that's it.
And I don't think we have any invasion coming.
That's the judgment call
from
he's made.
Right,
And hopefully some
that's
judge will-
what they're claiming.
Right.
But in the meantime, just in the last 2 weeks, you've seen Senator Chuck Grassley,
Yep.
staunch Republican in Iowa,
Very
and a
good,
couple
yeah.
of other guys have come forward with Democrats to introduce a bill that would basically take back that authority, which would basically say that if a president is claiming national emergency, it triggers a review process by Congress, which we can have a motion to disapprove.
Sure.
Of the tariff.
You should.
And so.
Given Article
So
1.
another Republican in the House, Don Bacon from Nebraska, is introducing a companion bill. Don and I sit on committee together. I talked to him a couple days ago and just said, sign me up, put me on.
Yeah.
Because that we need that with the divided Congress is to have some, bipartisan effort
Yes.
to push back on this. And I will tell you, for businesses whose heads are spinning, trying to figure out, from one day to the next, what the cost of different materials
Sure.
and components, and I was with a liquor distributor down in Old Saybrook who has ordered, wine and alcohol from Europe that's there. I mean, the stuff is on the boat coming over here, and he has absolutely no idea, what
much
he's
he's
going to
gonna
be
pay
paying
for
for
it,
it. And And that's the thing that's been so additionally outrageous about this is that, you can make an argument that some tariffs make some sense for critical technologies or key industries or whatever, but you don't do it by throwing a rabbit punch. I mean, you've got to give people a chance to adapt to it. So this guy is not like worrying about this cargo on board a ship that's coming into New York Harbor in terms of what he's going to be paying.
It's absurd.
And really, that's just one very small example of what's going on out there.
Well, you have to take a look at the strategy. There were certain tariffs that were strategic.
Yes.
And that they had an impact on expanding a business. But having the blanket tariffs all over the world is not strategic at all. It's just it's just hard to say what it is. The business community is trying to figure it out. So is the stock market. And again, those 401ks and 401as are going to be up and down, and hopefully you're not relying on them completely. And then to have Social Security threatened, and then the Medicaid program that helps everybody. It's the foundation for health care all throughout the country. Is something that we really have to get out there and, like everybody says, get out there and complain, work with Congressman Courtney, work with our United States senators, be out there and, and also you had a great list of different organizations that are against this, the American Heart Association, Cancer Society, you have about 15 or 20, so I would like to be able to take those and add them to my blast so that people can see. You join up with these groups. All right, I'm going to give Joe Courtney the last chance to...
1 minute left.
And thank you for, really wrapping it up on that note. So, there's a lot of people who are like, well, I don't need to call him because even though I'm having trouble, with my Social Security or, I'm getting impacted by tariffs or, a whole range of things that are happening out there, you should call the office, okay? Because frankly, the individual stories are probably the most powerful examples in terms of, how, we can convey the message and whether, again, it's Medicaid or Social Security, tariffs. Really the list goes on and on. Our Norwich office, which is nearby, is 860-886-0139. And again, if you're having problems, particularly with Social Security, we really encourage you to call.
And I will we're going to take this and put it on my e-blast so you can find this whole show and all the information and contact information on my e-blast. So please sign up for me at the Capitol at susan.johnson@cga.ct.gov. This is important stuff. Let's save the people here in Connecticut and the people in the United States. And we know we have a great Congressman, Joe Courtney, and he's going to help us do it.
Great.
Thanks
you so
Susan.
Much. Great to see you guys.
Thank you, Joe.
Right.
I can remember you coming in here just before the election, and we had a great aftermath, and we're going to have a great aftermath now. We're going to do this. We're going to get this done. We're going to save this country. So we have to work together, folks. We're all in this together. We're all Americans. Let's come together and make things right.
Amen.
Thanks, Joe.
Yep. Thanks,
Appreciate it.